let's actually put all that all-star nonsense to bed, put it behind us. Let's move on, get to the rest of the season. So, all-star break always comes around 2/3 of the way through the season. So we got the last third of the season left, 26, 27 games for pretty much everybody. No games right now, but they'll be in a few days. Kick things back off. So, it's been a while actually since we've really done any like standings updates. So let's just start off looking at the standings. Um, being an LA fan, obviously things are not too good, but we'll get there. Let's start with the Eastern Conference, your conference. Of course, you got the Celtics up there. That's absolutely no surprise. Cleveland Cavaliers, they're up there doing pretty well. Bucks, they're at 3, but we were just talking about this. Not to say it's a fraudulent 3, because the season ain't over, but not very good. With recent memory, Chris Middleton's been out. You got other guys been out. Chris Middleton's still out right now. But there's just not too much going on in Milwaukee to be happy about. You fired Adrian Griffin. We hadn't talked about that yet. Bring in Doc Rivers after having an interim for a few games. Doc was a consultant for the team, consultant to AG himself. Now he takes over, and it seems like every other day I see some meme coming out of Doc's mouth, like about some nonsense. Like JJ fired him up this morning. It's ain't the end of the world, but I just, since it's the first time we're talking about it, I just don't understand why they hired Doc. I don't get it.
I'm gonna jump a little out of left field real quick. I won't stay on this metaphor for too long. But when the U.S. soccer team lost in the World Cup last year, they fired Greg Berhalter, and then they went to search for a new coach. And eventually, when the coaching cycle was over, they rehired Greg Berhalter, and everyone was like, "Huh? Like, how do you fire a coach and then decide to hire him back?" Well, when they released the documents that showed the coaching requirements and like the kind of stipulations they were looking for, they essentially were looking exactly for Greg Berhalter. Every single trait was the way he coached, the way he used lineups, the way he kind of tweaked the teams. So they fire him, and then they were looking for exactly him. Couldn't find exactly him and anyone else, so they rehire him. The Bucks fire AG after a 30-13 start to the season, and then go straight to his consultant. It's the same. It's like, we're gonna fire this guy. We need a big change. Something's not going on right. And then we switch to a guy who has been consulting him and running similar things. Doc is better defensively for sure. Even in our weird 3-7 last 10 stretch right now since Doc has been here, we have been a little better defensively. We haven't been allowing as many points. Doesn't mean we've been winning games. Unfortunately, we haven't been scoring as many points. But we've seen an immediate impact on the defense from Doc, and Doc sure has had a long road tenure for most of the time that he's been here. Has not gotten to be in Milwaukee for as long as he should. But I just don't see them need to fire a coach halfway through the season if your big plan is, well, we're going to hire his consultant. I just don't think that really makes a whole lot of sense to me. Unfortunately, the Bucks were 30-13 when we hired him. We're 35-21 now. Joe Prunty got 2 of those wins before Doc fully took over. So it's an interesting one as a Bucks fan. I'll go on record and say that I didn't want Doc Rivers. And when we get to the playoffs, especially, I'll be horrified to see a Doc Rivers team that I have to root for. But hopefully we can get Chris back, get some stuff going on. I don't think that it's all doom and gloom, but we do not look as strong as the other people in the top 6 or maybe even top 8 for the East. So moving from there, the Bucks and Knicks have been pretty close to each other all season. Knicks are 4th, 33-22. They have been on a pretty good tear, especially after the trades they made. The Sixers 32-22. Joel Embiid went down, and they started sinking with him. Hopefully they'll stay strong enough to be alive when it comes to playoff time. You hate to see a team sink that much because their MVP guy is going down. Maxey and a few others have been fighting for their lives to keep them alive, but they're going to struggle a little more. 3-7 in their last 10 as well. The Pacers round out the top 6, who, with the play-in tournament, that means they're the last guaranteed spot if they were to end right now. They're 31-25. Pretty good season for them. They started pretty hot. They have cooled off a little bit as well. 5-5 in their last 10. So the top 2 teams in the East are 8-2 and 9-1 in the last 10. After that, they're all the next people in the top 6 are either have a losing record in their last 10 games or they're even at 5-5. So the Bucks 3-7, the Knicks 5-5, the Sixers 3-7, and the Pacers 5-5. So a little bit of a rough stretch for some of those teams at the top of the East before the end of the All-Star break. But the top 6 isn't super surprising. I can't say that the Heat being right below at 7 is super shocking. That's kind of where I would expect them to sit around. That maybe the Magic being as good as they are is crazy. We talked about that there in our early season thing, but I would maybe expect the Hawks to be a little better. But as far as the East goes, I mean, bottom up, Pistons, Wizards, Hornets, Raptors, Nets, Hawks, Bulls, Magic, Heat, and then you got the top 6. I don't think there's a whole lot that's crazy. I think it's fun. It's cool to see the Knicks at the 4. It's cool to see the Cavs at 2. It's fun to see the Magic at 8 right now. But I don't think this is a super shocking Eastern Conference lineup at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Magic fan or anything. I mean, really outside of the Dwight Howard years, when they played the Lakers in the finals, it's not like I've ever paid that much attention to the Magic. But I'm happy for them that they're at the 8 spot. Obviously now, with the play-ins ever since the bubble, it's not a guaranteed spot. If they stay where they are, they'll be right. They're right there with the Heat at 7, like you said. Ben Carroll is playing one Rookie of the Year last year, been playing really well this year. Like, I can't be anything but happy for them. I mean, because they were god awful. Like the past 3 years, they had like 2 playoff seasons a couple of years ago when we were in high school. Which seems like forever ago now, but even before that, they were like god awful, bottom of the league. I mean, it was bad. So, seeing anytime I see a team that's been pretty much horrible, at least be in a position to make the playoffs with the play-in now, can't do nothing but root for him. Like the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, we talked about it early in the season. We talked about him, the extension, how well he's been playing. That continued. We'll talk about this in a second because we hadn't talked too much about it this year. But a couple weeks ago, he was talking about the 65 game requirement for MVP, all NBA, all that stuff. And it is unfortunate for a guy like him where might get injured. It's not like he's sitting out games for no reason. Might not be able to qualify because of games missed. But in my opinion, I think the rule is really good. Maybe they might adjust it for the other awards, all NBA team selection, stuff like that. But at the very least, MVP definitely should be where it is. And I think if guys are complaining about it, unless you're injured and you really can't play, I don't see what your problem is. So, not in his case specifically, but I was just thinking about him talking about the Pacers. But yeah, the rest of the East, not really surprising. Like Pistons, I mean, it's well documented how bad the Pistons have been. Wizards, Hornets. Jacques Vaughn just got fired the other day. Like I think yesterday, actually, either yesterday or the day before, Jacques Vaughn got fired out of Brooklyn. Brooklyn's pretty much been, they were a little bit better, after that whole KD, Kyrie, Harden fiasco, but they really screwed things up there, to be honest with you. I think they probably just been better off not getting those guys in the first place and just continuing on with, with the court they had. But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, it's not too much surprising there. Again, Milwaukee, it's not the end of the world, going to them. Like they're 3 of 7 out of their last 10. Got about 20 something games left, 25, 26. Do the math. Not the end of the world for them. But again, like I'd be a little disturbed. You get to the playoffs, considering how they, even with Giannis getting injured, considering how they got knocked out of the playoffs last year by the Heat, they might end up playing the Pacers this year if things kind of stay where they are. The Pacers obviously have been a pretty big thorn in their side all season. Then that might be a quick turnaround for Doc Rivers. You never know, but I ain't wishing death on nobody or anything. I ain't wishing nothing bad on them, but we just gotta be honest here. But let's get to the Western Conference. Let's actually kind of start from the bottom because the bottom of the West, or at least the bottom of the play-in, kind of interesting. You got all the California teams except for the Clippers down there. Warriors, something like this year, the Warriors, we just been talking about Clay not being good. And then he turns around and has that crazy game off the bench. Draymond being a crackhead, that. I didn't want to go that far, but I mean, Draymond has been off his, I don't know what this year. So you got all that crap going on this year for them. They'll still be in it if they get in the play-in, they win a couple of games. Being in the 10-9, 10 spot, they'll have to win 2. But I don't know. I'd still give the Warriors a chance if they make the playoffs. Like, even though the Lakers beat them last year, like I would not sit here and say, "Oh, Warriors get in, they have no shot." You know, Kuminga, like he's been a bright spot for him this year. Like, I don't think they're gonna have Clay come off the bench and expect him to do 40 every game, something like that. But Clay still got it. He's just something's just not been right with him. But maybe turning of the tide coming out of the All-Star break, maybe not. And I mentioned the Lakers, like we're not in a good spot considering where I personally think we should be. But they are 7-3 out of their last 10, so they're on a good run right now. But for me, it's just like it's the same crap every year, you know. And this year, like they didn't blow up the team at the trade deadline this year. You know, they got Spencer Dinwiddie, but that wasn't that was different. So that's not even I wouldn't even consider that part of that, right? So for me, it's the same thing every year. You're like middle of the pack, you're slightly out of the playoffs, not in the play-in. Around this time, they make some moves or they don't, either or. They either back into the playoffs or miss it. It's just like I don't see how many times you can do this over and over. You know, and we were talking about the Clippers. The Clippers up at 3. When we did that last video, the Clippers, they were, you know, the reverse, right? They were in a much worse spot when they first got James Harden and everything. They've completely turned that around. They've been great. Like the Clippers right now, they've run out of LA apparently because I mean it's just it's not fun for the Lakers and you know hear LeBron talking about his you know basketball mortality and everything. Should he take a farewell tour? And it's like great. I don't care right now. At least get if look because for me it's kind of like the Warriors. The Lakers get in, I think they got a chance. You know, better than some of the teams that are above them. So you know, I'll pass it back to you to talk about this top 6 here. But to me, the most dangerous teams are still Lakers with LeBron, Golden State with Steph and them. Like, if they get in, they get a chance. Even things that aren't, you know, they've been on a pretty good run, both teams in the last 10. But, you know, overall for the season, they haven't been that great. They get in and get on
Yeah.
a run. You don't know what happens.
Yeah, I think we said this the past 2 or 3 years, maybe not all 3 yet. I'm trying to rack my brain on where these teams have landed playoff wise each time. But the Lakers and Warriors are not a team that if you're a different Western Conference team, you want to face in the playoffs. It doesn't matter if they had to go through the play-in tournament. It doesn't matter if they were the 10 seed when the season ended. They have Steph Curry and LeBron James on their respected rosters, and you just you don't want to face that in a playoff intensity. Obviously, the Nuggets did some nasty work to the Lakers last year, but the Lakers and Warriors still put up some pretty big impacts. The Kings probably should have beat the Warriors last year. Didn't work out. Weren't able to hold on to it. Ended up getting sent home. You just don't want to face these teams. A lot of danger in that. The Kings and Mavericks round out that little play-in bubble. I don't find them to be as scary. They have high-powered offenses. The Mavericks have locked in a little bit on defense. What I will say is that I think the Mavericks are the winners of the trade deadline. They pulled in Daniel Gafford, which I think is a major pickup for them. They pulled in PJ from Charlotte. I believe that they're in a pretty good position to stay pretty hot. And they added a little bit of offense, they added a little bit of defense, fixed some holes that they needed. They definitely look poised to be a little bit of a scary team. And so with the West, I'm an Eastern Conference guy. Obviously, my team is the Bucks. I was rooting for the Eastern Conference for the All-Star game, just for fun. I don't really have a big dog in that fight. If the West would have won, I wouldn't have been like, oh, man, horrible. But what makes the West really fun, I think, is how close things are. Especially you have these like different tiers of things. So before we get to like this top tier of the West, because there's this interesting kind of 4-way dogfight, which the number 1 team has pulled a little bit away from since. But the Suns and Pelicans are at 5 and 6. They round out this kind of top little layer, middle layer of the pack. Really, they could be grouped together directly with the Kings, Mavericks, Lakers, and Warriors. Warriors are the furthest away. Lakers not that far behind any of those guys, but Pelicans at 33-22, Suns at 33-22 for 2 different reasons. Suns have a really dynamic offense that can really overpower teams pretty easily, and the Pelicans have a really good defense. They can get really hot sometimes and put up a bunch of points and stop you from scoring. I watched them play live against the Nets this season. They they held the Nets to like no points. They didn't score a whole lot in that one either, but they didn't need to. I watched Cam Thomas shoot like 0 for 9 sides, and Spencer Dinwiddie, new Laker, watched him shoot like 0 for 10. So it was that was an interesting one. Big pickup for the Lakers on the horizon there. But then you have that top four chunk, which I think is going to be really interesting. The defending champs, the Nuggets, are actually fourth. They're 36-19. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They had a really weird streak where they started to really fumble. At one point, these teams were all tied, and then all of a sudden it started to separate a little bit. And the Nuggets fell most in that separation, 36-19. Now Clippers, 36-17. As Terrence said, last time we covered the Clippers, they just picked up James Harden, and they were in this weird limbo of how do we figure out managing all these hands. And James Harden said, once we get this going, it'll be scary. They have been horrifying. If you are playing against them, it is a scary moment. They are a really good offensive team. They're a really good defensive team. They're 20-6 at home now. They're 16-11 on the road. They have turned it around. 7-3 in their last 10. They've just had it going. James Harden and Paul George have played well. Kawhi has played well. Russ has played well. There's good basketball going on over there in LA. But not enough to entirely be at the top two. The top two actually represented by the two top people in the All-Star game for the West. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was second in scoring. The Thunder are second in the West. He posted a weird little cryptic caption on Instagram after the All-Star weekend saying he's not content with two or whatever. So we'll see that race heat up. Thunder have been on a roll as well. They've been a hard team to stop. They are also probably better defensively than people are expecting. I think a lot of people think about their offense when you have people like Chet and Shai. But there's a lot of defense going on over there as well. And then speaking of defense, that is kind of the story. Over in the East, of course, you got a lot of defense with the Celtics. They're a good offensive team, but that's a good defensive team as well. And the Timberwolves, 39-16, one win away from being the second team to reach 40 wins. The Celtics are at 43. They have really been good defensively. They've fought really hard. They are pretty good offensively. They get this weird little big man trio going sometimes. They got Ant and Mike Conley that can get going. I think they are a pretty solid team. Playoff wise, a lot of these teams in this top six, I don't know if they hold up fully against a playoff ready Lakers or Warriors team. But there's a lot of room for some fun outcomes that we haven't seen in a while to go out in the West. I do think that if the Timberwolves can hold on to that defensive intensity, they're already pretty intense for the regular season, and we usually see that ramp up for teams in the postseason. If they can keep that ramped up, I'm not sure about a title run, but I think the Timberwolves have the ability, especially with a home court advantage, to make a deep run. But I believe teams like the Clippers are going to be really scary. And then if the Lakers and Warriors get into it, I think you've got a really deadly California trio there that the rest of the Western Conference is going to want to watch out for.
Yeah, so let's actually move into this coming weekend real quick, into the next week. Obviously, games start back up on Thursday. So, we got a bunch of matchups and, obviously a return to basketball. And just off the top of the list, like the media one that I look to, I guess being a Laker fan, I just mentioned it. Lakers and Golden State Warriors, that one, always a fun matchup, always good. LeBron and Steph Curry going up against each other. You also got the other LA team that's running things right now, the Clippers, OKC, two top teams in the West. They're going at it. So you got some good games just immediately on Thursday. So I think they definitely scheduled it like that on purpose. Having one at 8 o'clock, the next one at 10. You can probably catch both of them if you really want to. Maybe heading into the weekend, you got some games here. Of course, Boston, New York, that one is that's just a old time rivalry, I guess. But also both teams top four in the East. That should be a good one as well. You got Dallas, Indiana, so Luka, Tyrese Halliburton. You got some guys in there on Sunday. Milwaukee and Philly on Sunday too, 1 o'clock. LA and Phoenix, so KD, LeBron. I mean, you got a lot of good games here. Just in the next few days. So, I'll let you take over for the next couple days after that. Like, what are some matchups that you're kind of looking forward to heading into the last 2 months of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on one that's going to come up on Friday as a Bucks fan. We get the Minnesota Timberwolves at 10 p.m. for our first game back from All-Star break. I can say that I'm excited to see that game. I'm not really excited to see what the outcome of that game will be. A little worried about that one. But as we push into March, I think we got some fun stuff coming up. March 1st, a few Fridays from now, you're really going to get kind of a classic, Central Division. Not that divisions matter too much, but you get Milwaukee and Chicago. Chicago's played hard. Kobe White's been playing pretty good. As you move in the first weekend of March. You don't get a whole lot going on, but you do get Denver and Los Angeles at 8:30 p.m. on March 2nd. This should be on ABC. That's it's been a big rivalry here lately, as the Nuggets and Lakers cannot exist without trash talking each other. And so we'll see how that one goes. I think that'll be fun. The Lakers, despite their weird struggles, obviously we covered their 7-3 in their last 10, and they play really hard against these teams in the season. The last Lakers Golden State game was like the best game of the season so far, and that was when both of them were in a slump. It just kind of popped up out of nowhere. And following that up, that first Sunday of March, you get Golden State and Boston. Finals rematch from a little bit ago. That ought to be a fun one. And then more pain and suffering for the Bucks, as we'll get the Clippers coming into Milwaukee. Hopefully, being in Milwaukee will be helpful for that one. But yeah, I mean, I think that we get certain ones. I think one of the more upsetting things, at least as a Bucks fan, is that we actually are out of Pacers matchups. There's going to be no more Bucks Pacers games. But I do feel like the second half of the season is oftentimes front loaded with these kind of big, scarier, playoff implication games. Just skipping ahead a little bit, you got April 9th. Where Milwaukee and Boston will play at 7:30 p.m. That's going to be a big one. There's just a lot of stuff going on as the season rounds out. I think we have a lot of these top tier teams kind of clashing, especially as you get to ones that are close. I'm not sure that the Celtics are really catchable as far as number one in the East. Like it's mathematically possible, but it seems like they'll stay pretty hot. But I do enjoy the way that the end of the season always seems to ramp up and give you like these really prime time matchups between these close playoff teams, getting you a little bit of a preview of what could come. And so I don't know. Won't get to see Doc Rivers face the Pacers unless we match up with them in the playoffs. So that'll be scary. But I can say that I don't care if we lose in the next round, if Doc Rivers somehow gets us out of a series with the Pacers, just considering how the regular season went, maybe I'll like him. Maybe I'll mail him. I don't know. It might be too far, but maybe I'll be a little okay with the hire, because I'm not sure that our previous coaching scheme would get us through that. But we won't get to see that. That's going to be a little unfortunate as the season rounds out. For some reason, we played the Pacers like 5 times in January, and then it was over. So otherwise, though, I think there's a lot of really good matchups as the season comes to a close.